Welcome to the Science of Hockey, the podcast where we break down the science behind ice hockey. I'm the analyst, your host, and every week we explore the data, research, and evidence that shape how we play, train, and understand the game of hockey. From biomechanics to performance psychology, we take you beyond the rink and into the research lab, giving you insights that go beyond hearsay and into what really makes the difference on the ice. Whether you're a player, a coach, a parent, or just someone passionate about the sport, we're here to bring you scientifically backed information in a language that's friendly and easy to understand. So grab your skates and let's dive into the science of hockey. Hello, hockey fans. This is the Science of Hockey, and I'm the analyst. In this episode, we explore how sprinting capabilities and anaerobic power intersect in youth ice hockey. From force velocity profiles to gender-specific training tips, join us to learn how young athletes can excel on and off the ice.
Welcome to the deep dive. We're diving into the world of hockey today, trying to figure out what makes those young players so explosive.
Explosiveness, yeah.
You sent over some research on that from the December 2023 Frontiers in Sports and Active Living.
Yeah.
It's about sprinting and something called anaerobic capacity. I'm intrigued.
It is pretty cool stuff.
Can you give us a quick breakdown?
Basically, imagine you're trying to understand why some players just explode off the line.
Mm-hmm.
Others, they might be fast, but they don't have that same burst.
Right.
This research digs into that.
So it's not just about how fast they are.
No, it's way more nuanced than just clocking their speed. This study used something called force velocity profiling.
On force velocity,
It's
right?
it looks at how the athlete's body, generates and uses force to reach that speed.
So it's not just the final speed.
Nope. They're looking at the whole sprint, the whole thing.
So how do they actually measure this force velocity thing?
Well, they use like a radar device to track speed during the sprint, and then they use a special equation to basically create this theoretical optimal profile.
A theoretical profile, what is that?
It's like it lets them compare an athlete's performance to this ideal standard, like a blueprint for the perfect sprint.
Okay, so what are the key things they're looking at within this profile?
So there's three main things: F0, V0, and Pmax.
Okay, break those down for me.
F0, that's the maximum force an athlete could generate. Like, think of it as their raw strength potential.
Okay, raw strength, got it. What about V0?
V0 is their theoretical top speed, how fast they could go.
And Pmax?
Pmax combines both force and velocity to measure, their explosive capability, their power.
So it's like strength, speed, and power all rolled into one.
Exactly. You got it.
So we've got this force velocity profile. How does this connect to what you called anaerobic capacity?
Oh, good question. Anaerobic capacity, it's the ability to perform these short bursts of intense activity, like, those quick sprints we see in hockey.
Gotcha. So are you saying there's a connection between sprinting mechanics and how well someone performs in those short bursts?
That's exactly what this study was looking at. They were looking at the link between those sprint mechanics, that force velocity profile, and how well athletes do in those anaerobic activities.
So they have to test these players then, right?
Oh, yeah. They actually used two different tests.
Okay, what were they?
So first they used the Wingate anaerobic test. It's called the WANT.
Okay.
And that one's done on a stationary bike. Basically measures power output over like a short all-out sprint.
Oof, that sounds tough.
Oh, yeah, it's brutal.
Oh, was the second test?
The second one was they actually designed it specifically for hockey. It's the repeated sprint anaerobic test, or RSA.
RSA, okay. What's that one like?
So imagine 6 20-meter sprints, each with a 180-degree turn.
Whoa.
Mimicking those quick bursts and changes in direction, the things you see on the ice.
Yeah, so they were really trying to make it game-like.
Exactly. That was the whole point.
This is getting really interesting. So when they looked at all this data, did anything surprise them about, which of those FV variables were most important?
Well, this is where it gets really interesting. They found that V0, that maximum theoretical velocity, it was the strongest predictor of performance.
Really?
In both the WANT and the RSA tests.
Yeah. I would have thought, raw power would be more important, that Pmax thing.
You'd think so, right? Especially for those repeated sprints.
Exactly.
But even on the stationary bike, the ability to hit those high speeds, it was more important than pure strength.
Huh. So maybe it's more about being able to, translate that force into speed? Efficiently, I mean.
Yeah, that seems to be the case.
Interesting. Anything else surprising?
Oh, there's more.
Mhm.
They also found that F0, that ability to generate force at low speeds,
Yeah.
it was only significantly linked to performance in the female players.
Oh, wow. Really?
Yeah.
That's pretty big. That could change how we train these athletes.
Right.
Especially if we've been, just pushing strength training for everyone equally.
Yeah, exactly.
Before we get into that, though, I want to dive into some of the specifics from the study.
Sure.
Can we do that?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
One thing they observed in both male and female players was this force deficit during the sprint.
But force deficit, what's that?
Basically, the athletes weren't using their full force potential.
Wait, so even though they could generate more force, they weren't using it all?
Exactly.
Huh.
I wonder why.
Well, that's a good question. And it might be a key reason why that V0, that ability to hit those high speeds.
Yeah.
It was so important. If you're not using all your force, maximizing speed, that becomes even more critical.
Yeah, that makes sense. This is fascinating stuff. I am definitely eager to hear more about how those sex differences you talked about might impact training.
Yeah.
We should unpack that in part 2 of this deep dive.
Yeah.
All right, so we found some pretty interesting things in part 1, especially those sex differences. Yeah, definitely some interesting stuff.
I'm curious, how do you think this research could actually, change the game for training young hockey players?
Well, it's not just about knowing that men and women are different, right?
Right.
It's about understanding how those differences actually affect their performance, out there on the ice.
Yeah, totally. So, what are some actionable takeaways? How can coaches and athletes use this information?
So for the female players, the research suggests focusing on exercises that, develop explosiveness at both low and high velocities.
Okay, so both strength training and speed drills.
Exactly. You want to build that raw force and then teach them how to use it quickly and efficiently. Remember that force deficit we talked about?
Yeah.
This could help them overcome that. What about training programs for the young men?
Yeah, what about them? Any adjustments you'd make based on the research?
Well, remember how V0, that max velocity, was such a strong predictor for them?
Yeah.
This research seems to say that, at least at this age, training should prioritize developing that speed even further.
So make them lightning fast.
Exactly. It's all about speed, speed, speed.
So if I'm a coach with a young male player, my focus is going to be drills to maximize his speed and acceleration.
Yep.
And for my female players, it's more of a combination of strength training and speed work.
You got it. This research is like giving coaches a more individualized roadmap,
Yeah.
It's pretty cool. It could help so many players reach their full potential.
It really could. But let's be real, no study is perfect, right?
Okay.
What limitations did the researchers point out?
Well, one thing they mentioned was, the lack of validation for this specific FV profiling method with adolescents.
Okay.
It's been shown to be reliable for adults.
Yeah.
But we need more research to confirm that it works the same way for younger developing athletes.
So it's exciting research, but we should view these findings as more of a starting point, not a final answer. What other limitations did they talk about?
Another thing to keep in mind is that this was an observational study. So we can't say for sure that, certain FV variables actually cause changes in anaerobic performance.
Okay.
It shows a correlation, but we need more research to prove causation.
So future research needs to kind of dig deeper into these relationships.
Yeah, exactly.
Speaking of future research, what directions did the researchers suggest exploring?
One thing they mentioned was investigating how well off-ice training, based on these profiles, how well it translates to actual on-ice performance. We want to see these findings play out in a real game situation.
Right, because dominating a stationary bike test,
Right.
that's totally different than, outmaneuvering someone on the ice.
Exactly.
Totally different.
What else? Any other suggestions?
They also suggested applying the FV profiling concept directly to skating movements.
Ooh, interesting. Like actually measuring force and velocity while they're skating? Exactly. So imagine measuring that during rapid accelerations and changes in direction,
Yeah.
all those things that are so crucial in hockey.
That would be huge. We could see how those skating-specific profiles relate to, those explosive moments in a game.
Exactly. It'd bring a whole new level of specificity to training.
Definitely. Well, this deep dive has been so insightful. I'm excited to hear what final thoughts you have for our listener as we wrap things up in part 3. We've talked about a lot with these young hockey players. Sprinting, those anaerobic tests, and the differences between men and women.
Yeah, it's been a pretty deep dive.
As we wrap up, what are the big things you want our listeners to remember?
I think the biggest takeaway is just how valuable this force-velocity profiling is.
Yeah.
It helps us understand how these athletes sprint at like a deeper level.
Right.
We're not just looking at speed anymore.
Right.
We're getting into the mechanics of it, how they generate and use force.
It's like we're peeking under the hood. What about those findings with V0, the maximum velocity, I mean? It was such a strong predictor, even in tests that didn't involve a lot of sprinting.
Yeah, that was pretty wild. It really shows you that athletic performance is like this complex puzzle.
Yeah.
And sometimes the things that seem most obvious, those aren't always the right answers.
Right, right. And of course, those sex differences. We can't forget about those.
Definitely not. They really highlight the need for a more tailored approach to training. It challenges that whole one-size-fits-all mentality.
Yeah, it's not just about training everyone the same way. It's about recognizing the unique needs of each athlete.
Exactly. And this research, it's like is giving us a roadmap. So we can develop training programs that help all players excel, regardless of whether they're male or female.
Awesome. Well, before we let you go, do you have a final thought for our listeners?
One thing I keep coming back to is this. If V0 is such a strong predictor, across both tests, even for movements that don't necessarily require hitting top speed, what does that actually tell us about how anaerobic capacity works, especially in these young athletes?
That is a great question. It makes you realize how much we still don't know about athletic performance. It's like we're just starting to understand it.
It's true. There's always more to learn.
And that's what makes it so exciting. Well, I think it's time for us to hang up our skates for now.
It's been fun.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the world of adolescent hockey players. And to our listeners, thanks for tuning in. We encourage you to check out the full study if you're interested. Keep diving deep into force velocity profiling. And who knows, maybe you can apply some of these insights to your own training or coaching, or even just your understanding of what makes these young athletes so incredible. Until next time.
Thanks for tuning in to the Science of Hockey. If you enjoyed today's episode, make sure to share it with your friends, teammates, or anyone who loves hockey as much as you do. Don't forget to subscribe so you never miss an episode. And we'd love to hear from you. Leave a comment to let us know what you liked, what you'd like to hear next, or any questions you have. Your feedback helps us make the show even better. Until next time, keep your skates sharp, your mind open, and keep chasing the science behind the game.